Hey scrappers, Robbie2Scraps here. We got ourselves a CRT television here. These are all over the place, and generally I only pick up the ones that aren't over like 40 inches because they're just way too big to handle. And getting rid of the tube isn't always easy. Alright, so usually these have about 4 screws around the sides here, and this case here is very easy to take off. Okay. Usually a little bit more easy than that, but I think I forgot to take a screw out. Okay, so here's what we got. We've got low grade, the yoke, and some wires, and that's pretty much what we got here. Now this one has tamper-proof screws, so you're going to want to get yourself something like this. Just a nice set of all the miscellaneous tamper-proof screws. They're about $20 on Amazon. Well worth your time if you're going to be taking, or well worth your money if you're going to be taking things apart. Alright, so let's first start by snipping some wires here. This one right here is the one people say can shock you, but if the TV hasn't been plugged in for a while, you don't have any problem. And honestly, I've done a ton of these. I've never had any problems. This one right here, it's a little bit thicker. That's called a degaussing wire. And that's usually copper, so you just snip it, and yeah, that's copper. This one's not very thick, but it's very low amounts of insulation on this, so it's pretty much just electrical tape wrapped around some copper. So pretty good money on that, especially if you got a stripper. That kind of wire is definitely worth your time to strip. So we'll get to that. This is the yoke. And generally there is some screws right here that hold this yoke in. So let me just get and this is usually stainless steel here. So make sure you throw that in with your stainless bucket instead of your normal. And we'll get this yoke out. Kind of show you how to do that. And you want to be careful, if you crack this part right here, the actual tube, you'll hear some gas, and that's the vacuum sucking in air. So it's nothing to be alarmed about. Just it'll happen from time to time. If you're doing a whole bunch of these, you're bound to break this tube once or twice, taking this yoke off. Alright, so on the yoke, well, first I'm going to cut these wires here. There's a good amount of wire in here, so we'll have a little bit of insulated wire. Alright, now generally you just want to twist it just like that. Usually does it. Alright, so there's your yoke. Lots of pretty copper there. We'll smash that in a second. And we'll get some of the copper out of there. Alright, so to clean up my workstation a little bit, basically just going to snip any wires that are connected here. And I'll move this tube and have a little bit more space. Alright, now that I got rid of the tube, here's what we're left with. Some low grade with a ton of wires connected to it. So I'm just going to go ahead and snip all these off. And a lot of these have pretty thick insulation, but not a whole lot of copper in them. So the only one that I'm actually going to strip is that degaussing wire. And that one is almost always worth stripping. The only time it wouldn't be worth stripping is if you snip it and it looks silver. Because from time to time, those are aluminum. They're most often copper, but every once in a while they will be aluminum. Alright, so there's your low grade board. I rip the motors and transformers off this because it's quite easy. That little black box right there, throw it in my copper bearing motors. Same with this one. I don't know if there's copper in there or not. I think there is, but my scrapyard takes them. This little transformer, rip it off. Rip it off. This is also a big transformer. Rip that off. So that's 20 cents a pound in my yard. And obviously, pretty easy to get to. All right, so there's a low grade. There's a big IC chip right there. If you want to take that off, that's $5 a pound. So, you know, get a good pile of those together, and it'll be definitely worth your while. All right, so let me kind of categorize all this, and I'll show you how to strip that degaussing wire. All right, so here's everything in the television. We got the yoke here. I'll break that down in a sec. 2 stainless clips there, a whole bunch of wire. Not a whole lot of weight, but some skinny ones. 2 speakers, steel, those are steel. Transformers, a couple ounces there. The degaussing wire, which I'm going to strip, and then some low-grade board, which I've kind of picked some of the goodies off. Alright, so let me strip this degaussing wire. Alright, so I'm using this TNT tool here. Kind of expensive. I think it's about $60 or so. But let me tell you, it makes everything so much easier. So just strip this wire, and this wire is pretty coarse because it's electrical tape. It's not really easy to maneuver around, but the stripper does a pretty good job of making it somewhat easy. Okay, so once you run it through the stripper, you'll get a little cut right here, and just pull the copper out and just keep pulling out. It's nice and simple. And there's the result. So 5.5 ounces, so almost a third of a pound there. Like I said, it is over a third of a pound. So anyway, that's what you get from the degaussing wire. That's kind of a smaller one. I've seen some that are up to 2 pounds, so they're definitely worth your time. Alright, next thing we're going to do is this yoke here, which again, this is kind of a smaller one, but for demonstration purposes, we're going to tear it up. 18 ounces, and my yard pays 20 cents a pound for this, so we're looking at about 22 cents for this. So let me show you how to smash this, and we'll make a little bit more money from it. Alright, so here's what you do with yokes. Get yourself a towel, like so. Put the towel down, lay the yoke down, cover it up. This is very scientific, so you have to be very precise with your next actions. What you do is you find yourself a hammer like this one, and you just give it a couple good whacks. A hard day at the office, just come home and break some yokes up. Alright, so that's the product. After that, most of this is plastic. These pieces right here, well, that's nothing. This, I'll need to hit this a little bit more. Let's just do that now. Alright, so this piece is ferrite. So throw that in your steel bucket, and the rest is number 2 copper. So that right there is a good piece of number 2 copper. Alright, so let me clean this up and we'll weigh everything out, and we'll see what the total TV is worth. Alright, so before I said that yoke was worth 22 cents as is. Just the copper there is 7 ounces on the nose. So almost half a pound, so we're looking at about $1.50. So I just made $1.30 by having a little fun and smashing something. I'll do that all day long. Not to mention there was a little ferrite from there, so maybe another 5 cents for that or something. So alright, so let me total all this up and we'll see how much everything's worth. Alright, here's everything broken down. Low grade board, almost a pound. So at 10 cents a pound, we're looking at 8 cents. Number 2 copper, that's the degaussing wire and the yoke. That's about $2.25 worth. My scrapyard pays $2.50 a pound for number 2. I got a couple number 1 wire here. That's just some degaussing wire that I didn't strip because it's a little too short. And they always have this little fat piece. It's kind of a double. Like there's an extra wire in there. I never bother with it. Just throw it in my number 1. That's $1.50 a pound. So that's about another 15 cents. 2 stainless steel rings. That's maybe a penny. Here's the steel. 2 speakers and a little bit of ferrite from the yoke, 13 cents. Some transformers, and copper bearing motors. That's another, oh, I don't know, 10 cents or so. They pay 20 cents a pound for this. And then there's about a pound of number 2 wire. So all said and done, the entire TV was about $3.75. That's $3.75. So they do vary a lot because this degaussing wire can be, like I said, I've seen some that have been up to 2 pounds. But generally speaking, I'd say the most valuable ones are probably worth about $10. And this was a Phillips. I don't know if that makes any difference or not, but if you see a Phillips, maybe just snip this cord and go if you don't want to bother with it. But there you go, $3.75. Subscribe to my channel, Robbie 2 Scraps, out of here.